This section is going to be covering how to both install Git, which is minimal, but more importantly, how to configure Git specifically from github.com to authenticate via an SSH key. This is because most of these technologies no longer will allow token-based or username password type authentication. In terms of installing Git, first you need to know whether you already have it. If you open up a command line and type git version, if you have Git installed, you'll see something returned. If you don't, the easiest way to install Git is via the GitHub desktop application, which looks like this. That's because its installation will also include installing the command line tool. This works the same for Windows, Mac, and Linux. If you don't want to mess with GitHub desktop, there are a couple of ways to install it. For Mac, if you have Homebrew, brew install Git, and for Linux, you can use apt-get. In order to generate the public and private key pair to use for github.com, you're going to need to use a tool called OpenSSL, so you first want to make sure it's installed. OpenSSL version will tell you. It's probably already installed. If it's not, you can Google how to find it and download it. The next step is then to actually generate the key pair. This is where you give it the protocol, in this case the type of encryption, this ED25519, followed by your email address. It's going to ask you for a location to put it, and you're going to want to keep it inside of your SSH directory and probably also give it a unique name because you may already have keys set up. In my case, I already have it, so I'm going to call mine GitHub temp. It's then going to ask you for a passphrase. And when it's done, it's going to generate the key. And you can see the various keys you have there by doing an ls on your, or if you're on another platform, a different command, on your SSH directory. You can see here I have a number of keys already set up. But more specifically, you can see this private key that I just generated followed by the public key. Before you can add the keys you just generated to your SSH agent, which is the process running locally behind the scenes, you first have to make sure it's running. You do this with the same command on every platform. If it's running, you'll see the process ID associated with it. The next step then is specific to platform. Specifically, if you're on Windows or Linux, you're going to run this command called just SSH add. But if you are on Mac, you then have to enter your passphrase, and if it worked, you'll see output that the identity has been added. Now that we have our keys generated and added to our SSH agent locally, we want to take the content of the public key and give it to GitHub. The private key is going to be something which is never shared and will remain on your computer in order to authenticate. This can be done if you're on Mac using pbcopy, where you give it the name of your key, specifically the public one, and if you're on Windows, you could use clip, and if you're on Linux, you could use cat. Otherwise, you could just go to this location with a text editor and copy the file. You then want to go to your settings, go to SSH and GPG keys, and say new SSH key. Give it some title, and then Control V, Apple V, paste it in, and then add it to your account. You then know that it worked if you can clone the sample repository. This could be done by using the git clone command and then using the SSH variant of the repository. If it worked, you won't be prompted for a password and it will clone the repository locally, which you can see worked for me.